The city of Nashville, known for its vibrant music scene, buzzed with its usual life as a chilly autumn breeze swept through the streets. For most, it was just another Friday evening. But for Elton John, the legendary musician, this was no ordinary day. Disguised in a faded leather jacket and a simple cap, he blended into the crowd as he strolled down Music Row, an area teeming with aspiring artists and small recording studios. Elton wasn't here for fame or accolades. He had heard whispers of a small family-owned music shop, Melody Strings, struggling to stay afloat amidst the pressure of rising rents and declining foot traffic. More intriguing was the story of the shop's owner, Maggie Cartwright, a single mother raising her 10-year-old son, Toby, who dreamed of playing the piano like Elton John himself. Toby's talent and passion for music had become the talk of their neighborhood, even as Maggie worked tirelessly to keep her dream of a thriving music shop alive. The encounter at Melody Strings. The shop was a quaint space with shelves of sheet music, walls adorned with vintage guitars, and an upright piano in one corner. A handwritten sign on the door read, "Open Mic Night Tonight, Support Local Talent." Elton pushed the door open, the soft chime of the bell above announcing his presence. Inside, Maggie was busy arranging books, her brow furrowed with worry. Toby sat on the old piano, his small fingers practicing scales with impressive precision. The boy glanced up as Elton entered, his eyes lighting up with curiosity. "Welcome to Melody Strings," Maggie greeted, her voice warm despite her evident fatigue. Elton gave a small smile. "Nice place you've got here. I heard you host an open mic night." Maggie nodded, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Yes, every Friday. It's one of the few things keeping us going. Local musicians play, and sometimes the audience donates." Elton looked at Toby, who was now staring at him with wide eyes. "You're quite the player," he said, gesturing to the piano. "Do you like it?" Toby nodded eagerly. "I love it. Mom says I play just like Elton John." He paused, his voice tinged with sadness. "But we can't afford real lessons, so I just practice here." Elton's heart clenched. He saw the same spark of passion in Toby's eyes that had driven him as a young boy. Before he could respond, the door jingled again, and a handful of local musicians entered, carrying guitars and drumsticks. A magical open mic night. As the evening progressed, the shop filled with people, neighbors, musicians, and even a few passers-by drawn by the music spilling out onto the street. Maggie worked tirelessly behind the counter, serving coffee and pastries while keeping an eye on Toby. Elton watched from the back of the room, his heart warming as each performer took the small stage. The talent was raw but genuine, a reminder of his own early days. When it was Toby's turn, the boy climbed onto the piano bench, his feet barely reaching the pedals. His small hands danced over the keys as he played a heartfelt rendition of Your Song. The crowd fell silent, captivated by the emotion he poured into every note. Elton felt a lump in his throat. When Toby finished, the room erupted into applause. Maggie's eyes glistened with pride as she hugged her son tightly. "That was beautiful," Elton said, approaching the stage. "You have a real gift, Toby." An unexpected offer. As the night wound down, Elton stayed behind, helping Maggie clean up. He learned more about their struggles, how rising costs had forced her to cut back on inventory and how Toby's dream of owning a proper piano seemed increasingly out of reach. Elton's mind raced. He had come here for a reason, and now he knew exactly what he needed to do. "Maggie," he said, "would you mind if I played a little something?" Her eyes widened. "Of course not. But we don't have the best piano." Elton smiled. "That's okay. Let's see if it remembers a tune or two." As he sat at the old upright piano, the room grew still. With practiced fingers, he began to play Tiny Dancer. The melody filled the small shop, rich and soulful, transforming the humble space into something magical. Maggie and Toby exchanged astonished glances as the crowd gathered once again, their whispers growing louder. Wait, is that Elton John? No way. When he finished, the room erupted in applause, cheers echoing through the shop. Elton turned to face the stunned crowd, his eyes twinkling with humor. It's been a while since I played an open mic night, he said, earning a wave of laughter. Hope in the music. As the crowd began to disperse, Elton pulled Maggie aside. I want to help, he said, his voice earnest. You've created something special here, and it deserves to thrive. Let me cover your shop's expenses and help Toby get the lessons he needs. Maggie's eyes filled with tears. I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept, Elton replied with a grin. Music has given me everything, and it's time I gave back. By the time Elton left that night, the shop's future was secure. But for Maggie and Toby, the real gift wasn't the money, it was the hope that came with knowing someone believed in them. A new beginning. The next morning, melody strings buzzed with energy. Maggie still couldn't quite believe what had happened. Elton John, a global icon, had not only visited her modest shop but had offered to help secure its future. She found herself replaying the events of the previous night in her mind, wondering if it had all been a dream. Toby, on the other hand, was bursting with excitement. Mom, he said, tugging at her arm as they unlocked the shop's doors. Do you think Elton will come back? He said I have a gift. Do you think he really meant it? Maggie smiled, brushing a hand over his unruly hair. Of course he meant it, sweetheart. But even if he doesn't come back, you still have something special inside you. Don't ever forget that. But Maggie didn't have time to dwell on the possibility of Elton returning. By mid-morning, word had spread across the community. Customers streamed into the shop, eager to support the place that had hosted the surprise performance of the year. Maggie noticed new faces among the regulars, and even a few reporters lingered outside, hoping for a glimpse of Elton or a comment from her. In the midst of the newfound attention, a delivery truck pulled up to the curb. Maggie furrowed her brow, puzzled. She hadn't ordered anything. The driver hopped out and handed her a clipboard to sign. Are you sure this is for us? She asked. The driver smiled and nodded. Absolutely. Courtesy of Mr. Elton John. Toby clutched her hand as they stepped outside, where two men were carefully unloading a gleaming, full-sized grand piano. Its black lacquered finish reflected the sunlight, and a small golden plaque on its side bore the inscription, For Toby, keep the music alive. Toby gasped. Mom! It's a real piano. Maggie's heart swelled with emotion. She ran her fingers over the smooth surface, blinking back tears. The driver handed her an envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. Dear Maggie and Toby. Every great artist deserves a great instrument. Keep playing, and keep inspiring. Love, Elton. A visit to the studio. 2 weeks later, Maggie received another surprise, a phone call from Elton's assistant. Mr. John would like to invite you and Toby to his private recording studio in London, the woman said. He'd love for Toby to see the space and meet some of his team. Maggie hesitated, her practical side immediately thinking of the costs and logistics. I'm not sure we can afford to travel right now. The assistant chuckled. Mr. John anticipated that. He's arranged everything, flights, accommodations, and transportation. All you need to do is say yes. That evening, Maggie sat Toby down to share the news. His face lit up like fireworks. London. His studio. Mom, we have to go. A week later, they found themselves stepping off a plane at Heathrow Airport, greeted by a driver holding a sign with their names. The car whisked them through the bustling city streets until they arrived at a discreet building tucked away in a quieter part of town. Inside, they were greeted by Elton himself. Welcome to my little haven, he said, spreading his arms wide. Come in, come in. Toby's eyes were as wide as saucers as he took in the studio's grandeur. Walls lined with platinum records, state-of-the-art equipment, and a grand piano at the center of it all. "Is this where you make all your songs?" Toby asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Elton chuckled. "Most of them, yes. Would you like to try playing here?" Toby hesitated, looking up at his mother. Maggie nodded encouragingly, and he walked over to the piano. His small hands found the keys, and he began to play a piece he had been practicing for weeks, "Can You Feel the Love Tonight?" The notes were soft but sure, filling the room with a gentle warmth. Elton watched in awe. "You've got a natural touch," he said when Toby finished. "But more importantly, you play with heart. That's something no one can teach. A life-changing opportunity." After their visit to the studio, Elton pulled Maggie aside. "I've been thinking," he began. "Toby's talent is undeniable, and it would be a shame if it didn't get the right nurturing. I'd like to sponsor him for lessons with one of the best piano instructors in the world." Maggie blinked, overwhelmed by the offer. "Elton, I can't let you do all this. You've already done so much for us." Elton placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Maggie, I know what it's like to be a kid with big dreams but limited resources. Someone helped me once, and now I'm paying it forward. Think of it as an investment in Toby's future." Before Maggie could protest further, Elton handed her another envelope. Inside was a detailed plan outlining Toby's lessons, along with a stipend to ensure Maggie wouldn't have to worry about finances during his training. "I want Toby to dream big," Elton said, his voice filled with emotion. "And I want you to know you're not alone in this. Returning home with hope." When Maggie and Toby returned to Nashville, they were greeted as local celebrities. The story of their journey had spread, and people from all walks of life came to Melody Strings to offer their support. The once struggling shop now thrived, thanks to the renewed interest and Elton's continued backing. But for Maggie, the greatest gift wasn't the piano or the financial help, it was the newfound sense of possibility. Watching Toby practice on his new piano every evening, his confidence growing with each passing day, she felt a hope she hadn't known in years. "This is just the beginning, isn't it, Mom?" Toby asked one evening, his fingers dancing over the keys. Maggie smiled, her heart full. "Yes, sweetheart. It is." As Toby's music filled their modest home, Maggie knew their lives had forever changed, not just because of Elton's generosity but because someone had believed in them when it mattered most. And that, she realized, was the greatest encore of all. The music shop's transformation. In the months that followed, Melody Strings became more than just a neighborhood music shop, it grew into a hub of inspiration. With Elton John's support, Maggie expanded the store's inventory, offering not just instruments but also free workshops for kids in the community. Elton's influence went beyond the financial backing. True to his word, he stayed in touch, occasionally sending notes of encouragement or recording short videos for Toby. He even arranged for a few of his musician friends to visit the shop, drawing crowds eager to meet them. The newfound interest meant Maggie no longer had to worry about making ends meet, and the shop's revenue skyrocketed. Toby, meanwhile, flourished under the guidance of his new instructor, a world-renowned pianist who had worked with some of the greatest talents in music. Lessons that once felt like an unattainable dream became a regular part of Toby's life. His dedication grew as he spent hours each day practicing, perfecting every piece with a mixture of joy and determination. Toby's first big performance. The real turning point came when Elton called Maggie with an invitation that left her speechless. "There's a charity gala in Los Angeles," Elton explained. "It's a big event, and I'd love for Toby to perform. What do you think?" Maggie hesitated, her protective instincts kicking in. "Are you sure he's ready? He's only 10. I've seen enough child prodigies in my life to know he's more than ready," Elton replied warmly. "But only if he wants to." When Maggie told Toby about the opportunity, his face lit up with excitement. "Play at Elton John's gala?" "Yes. Please, Mom, can I? And so, 2 weeks later, Toby found himself backstage at a glamorous venue, dressed in a small tailored suit Elton had sent for him. Maggie stood by his side, trying to calm her own nerves while reassuring her son. "You've got this," she said, kneeling to meet his gaze. "No matter what happens, I'm so proud of you." Elton appeared moments before Toby was set to perform, a reassuring smile on his face. "Toby, remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about feeling the music and letting it come from your heart. Just have fun." Toby nodded, his small hands clutching the program tightly as his name was announced. The audience erupted in applause as he stepped onto the stage, the grand piano gleaming under the spotlight. For a brief moment, he hesitated, overwhelmed by the sheer size of the crowd. But then he thought of his mom, Elton, and all the people who had believed in him. Taking a deep breath, he placed his hands on the keys and began to play. "A Star is Born." The opening notes of Rocket Man filled the hall, each one delicate yet powerful. Toby's fingers moved with confidence, his passion shining through every note. The audience sat mesmerized, some wiping away tears as the boy poured his heart into the performance. When he finished, there was a beat of silence before the crowd erupted into a standing ovation. Backstage, Elton and Maggie stood together, their hearts swelling with pride. "He's incredible," Maggie whispered, tears streaming down her face. Elton smiled. "He's just getting started." After the performance, Toby was flooded with praise from attendees, many of whom were prominent figures in the music industry. Several approached Maggie, offering to mentor Toby or provide additional opportunities to help him grow. A future full of possibilities. When they returned to Nashville, things changed even more dramatically. Local newspapers and TV stations covered Toby's performance, dubbing him a rising star. Offers for scholarships, recordings, and appearances began to pour in, but Maggie remained grounded. With Elton's guidance, she carefully navigated these new opportunities, ensuring Toby's happiness and well-being remained the priority. Meanwhile, Melody Strings continued to thrive. Inspired by Toby's story, local kids flocked to the shop to explore their own musical talents. Maggie used a portion of the store's profits to fund free lessons for children from low-income families, creating a ripple effect of kindness and opportunity in their community. As for Toby, his life blossomed in ways neither he nor his mother could have imagined. He performed at concerts, composed his own pieces, and even recorded a duet with Elton John, a modern rendition of your song that became an instant hit. An unbreakable bond. Years later, Toby would reflect on the moment his life changed forever. "It wasn't just about the piano," he would tell interviewers. "It was about believing in myself because someone else did." Elton remained a constant presence in their lives, not just as a mentor but as a friend. On Toby's 18th birthday, he surprised the young musician with a grand gesture, a scholarship to a prestigious music conservatory and a handwritten letter. "Toby. The world needs your music, but more importantly, it needs your heart. Never forget where you came from and how far you can go. Keep shining. Love, Elton." Maggie kept that letter framed on the wall of Melody Strings, where it served as a reminder of the kindness and generosity that had transformed their lives. The final encore. On a sunny afternoon in Nashville, Toby, now a celebrated musician, stood on the small stage of Melody Strings. The shop had expanded to include a performance area, where kids from all backgrounds could showcase their talents. Toby looked out at the crowd, a mix of familiar faces and eager young musicians, and smiled. "This shop," he said, his voice steady, "is where my journey began. It's a place where dreams come alive, just like mine did. And I'll never stop paying it forward." As he sat at the piano and began to play, the audience listened in awe. For Toby, it was the perfect way to honor his past, celebrate his present, and look forward to a future full of endless possibilities. And somewhere in the audience, Elton John sat quietly, watching with pride as the music carried on, a living testament to the power of kindness and the enduring magic of believing in someone's dream. The end.